Mon nom est Benoit Daignault, and I'm the Senior Vice President with Export Development Canada. We exist because we provide support to Canadian exporters, to Canadian investors that invest internationally, and we also support buyers of Canadian goods and services around the world. It's a real pleasure to be here today at the 35th AGM of the CCBC, and for this panel on market trends in the financial industry, Canada, China, and beyond. It's a wide topic, especially if you think about the importance of financial services across the globe. Now, just quickly thinking about Canada, I just have three very small statistics to share. The first one, if we look at the Canadian export of financial services, I'm talking about banking and I'm talking about insurance here, that amounted to $9.1 billion in 2012. That's 18% of all exports on the commercial side, commercial services side. Number two, if you look at the export of financial services, the actual growth in Canada, 8.2% in the last 10 years. So if you look at the growth of services, 2.8%, and if you look at the growth for goods, it's 1.8%. So the international engagement of financial institutions, Canadian financial institutions, is growing very quickly. And finally, the stock of CDIA, so it's basically Canadian companies investing abroad. The stock of CDIA just for financial services is 40%. So it's a huge portion of the investment that Canada is doing overseas. Going back to the international front, though, if you look at financial services, it's a great sector of innovation, a great sector of growth. As you know, though, innovation sometimes can go a little bit too far, and you have events like the crisis in 2009, where a lot of people realized that financial services is essentially an essential service. And it is for sure essential for the development of economies and development of trade between countries. And it's essential between the development of trade and engagement between Canada and China. All of this sounds pretty easy, but it can be fairly complicated. But we're lucky today because we have three experts with us that have a great deal of experience dealing with China and also dealing with Asia. So we hope that you'll be able to do a little bit of knowledge transfer and also maybe give us a few anecdotes that we can take back to our colleagues or boards or family. So let me introduce very quickly the three panelists. First we have Kevin Strain. Kevin is President of Sun Life Financial Asia. And you're based in Hong Kong, and your responsibility, you have to, actually part of your responsibility is to identify opportunities for growth in the region. Thank you for being here. Next we have Mr. Xie. Mr. Xie, you're an Executive Vice President with China Everbright Group, and you also serve as the Chairman and Party Secretary of Sun Life Everbright Life Insurance and Sun Life Everbright Insurance Asset Management. Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. And finally, we have Mark Machin. Mark, you're the President of the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board Asia. And you spent 20 years with Goldman Sachs in the region here, being based in Beijing. So you can find the complete bio of our panel today with the conference package. So we're going to start with questions, and at one point we're going to turn to the audience for questions as well, so please think about your questions in advance. So let's get right to it. So I'll start with Kevin. So Kevin, your Sun Life is a leading Canadian life insurance. You've been very active across Asia for years, and that includes China. Can you share your views on what life and health insurance means in a rapidly developing market like China?
Well, thank you, Benoit. Merci beaucoup. Xie. We'll cover all the languages here, and bonjour to the wall. It's great to be here today. And first, it's really special for me to be on stage with Mr. Xie. Mr. Xie is the chairman of our joint venture here in China, Sun Life Everbright, and as you mentioned, is an executive vice president with the Everbright Group, our partner. And the Everbright Group, to put it in perspective, is one of the top banks in China and has more customers than there are Canadian citizens. There's 44 million customers of the bank, 24 million credit card holders. You get a sense of the size and the potential. If you look at Sun Life in Asia, we've been in Asia for over 120 years. Up until last year, we were in 5 countries, and last year we added Vietnam and Malaysia to our existing five countries. Dean Connor, our worldwide, our global CEO, made Asia a pillar of the company's growth. And if you look at the potential here, and the Everbright Bank size is an example of that. You know, Canada, I think, is around 34 million Canadians today, and a great market for us. It's our history. It's where we originated. Actually, we originated in Montreal with one of these Quebec companies, and but the potential in Asia is enormous. And I think if you can tap into it, Canadian companies have an enormous chance to grow. Getting the right partner is very important to that. With Everbright, we're in 16 provinces. I think it's up to 78 cities now. And we have a tremendous reach across the country and ability to make those sorts of connections. We're also in Hong Kong. I should touch a little bit on Hong Kong. Hong Kong is our first market in Asia. We've been in Hong Kong for over 120 years. We have an agency there. We have a pensions business. We work on the broker business. And we recently are very proud to have added a new sign to the Hong Kong skyline. And so if you're in Hong Kong and you're on the Kowloon side, we purposely face China, trying to attract all those good China citizens that are coming to Hong Kong to do business. And so you can see the Sun Life sign in Causeway Bay. And so, you know, we think there's a tremendous opportunity for growth here in Asia. And the prospects in China in particular are good. If you look at the growing middle class in China, we all know the size of the population. The population in urban cities by 2020, it's expected that almost half of the population in urban centers will be well off or well off towards affluent, and there will be increasing needs for the types of products we offer. And at the present time, I would say there's a fairly short-term focus to a lot of the products. And one of the things that's going to evolve as the middle class evolves is a longer-term focus to financial products. And we want to be there from a wealth management perspective, helping the citizens save and save for education, save for retirement, save for things they want to do as they sort of over their lifetime. But we also want to be there from a protection perspective. And this is something that Sun Life is uniquely set up to help our joint venture partners with. We're leaders in protection around the world, finding ways to create more life insurance, more health insurance opportunities to protect families. So, you know, we have a clear focus on protection. One of the things I see developing over time in the market here is I'd like to see a more professional agency base. And if you look at one of the differences between Canada and China, all of the agents in Canada are full-time. They're all licensed. Many of them have additional degrees, whether it be a chartered financial planner or a chartered life underwriter or a health underwriter. And growing that training base, growing the sophistication of the agents. Agents in China, the compensation has gone down 30% in the last 2 years. They make about 50% of what the manufacturer makes. So finding a way to grow a strong professional agency base, I think, will be very important for the industry.
So we'll get back to regulation a little bit later. So, Mr. Xie, as wealth creation becomes mainstream, and you talked about wealth creation, of course, how does the customer focus changes, and how your industry serves both the existing middle class and the emerging middle class?
谢谢主持人先生的介绍。刚才这个泰文先生已经有了一个很好的介绍。这个我非常高兴参加中加论坛，也非常高兴以后和凯文，他也是我的老朋友，也是我们现在的合作伙伴。包括Machin先生共同交流这样一个问题。正像大家知道，这个中国过去30年以来，这个改革开放，经济获得了快速的发展， 那么居民收入大幅提高，然后老百姓财富开始快速积累起来。那么根据有些资料显示，我们现在个人可投资的资产总额现在已经达到了83万元，在我们国家。那么在这83万元中，在个人资产在10万美元到100万美元这样一个富裕阶层现在已经达到了1000多万。那么到13年底，估计这一数据还会快速的增长。所以这给不同的金融机构在参与财富管理方面提供了大量的业务空间。那么随着这个居民收入的增加在4个方面这个趋势是比较明显的。第一个趋势就是满足居民这个收入现在越来越倾向于全方位的这样一种服务，涵盖了居民的医疗、健康、保险、养老等等方面。那么第二个就是长期化，在5年以前、10年以前，中国的居民收入还满足于短期化这样一种增值的目标。那么现在开始向这种全生命周期的这种保险保障这样一个目标的发展。那么过去第三个呢，就是过去我是做证券业、银行业，那个时候老百姓这个投资目标渠道是比较单一的。中国的老百姓开始有存款还是20多年以前才开始，那么到后来呢，开始有股票基金，再后来呢可以买一些房地产。那么到了目前，特别是最近3年来，这个老百姓的投资这种长期化、保险保障化，开始买信托产品、保险产品，包括现在个人理财，开始买一些高端的艺术品收藏，这种长期化和高端化，也是越来越明显。那么第4个呢，开始国际化，就是有一部分老百姓开始把，特别是这些富裕高端的富裕人才，开始把个人的资产不但面向国内的市场的配置，来开始面向国际市场的配置。那么这些趋势的出现呢，就像开文刚才讲的，为我们保险公司等不同的金融机构这种财富管理提供了大量的业务增长空间。但是中国的保险业坦率地讲，由于发展的时间比较短，它的业务的这个功能，包括在参与财富管理方面，思想准备是不足的。那么客户的变化是非常明显。那么从保险业目前现状来说呢，投资的渠道呢比较单一。原来呢是投资渠道比较狭窄，去年的投资期，新政以来的这个投资开始大幅变化。那么同时产品同质化现象比较严重，产品的保险保障这样一些功能这个不是很明显。和其他银行证券的这个金融机构来对比呢，我们这个保险保障的特点也不是很突出。那么保险业最重要的在参与财富方面受到制约，就是它的准备度、技术准备、思想准备。因为去年这个投资新政开始，保险资金才能发挥自己这个资产周期比较长这样一个趋势，开始配合其他资产平台。那么以前是不可以。那么我们国难人民云寿在3大的帮助下，他们是一个有150年历史的公司。那么我们有很好的合作关系。2002年建立以后，公司在公司管理架构、产品精算技术，包括风险管理技术的方面，奠定了比较扎实的基础，09年获得了快速的发展。刚才您讲的这个译文趣事，许许多多加拿大人在我们的公司的发展上付出他们辛勤汗水和努力。这只是中国整个保险业加拿大人对外开放的一个缩影。这个我想今天说呢，有一个加拿大人为我们这个公司建立来了将近100次，这就是开文先生的前因。他接他的前任的时候，开文先生跟我讲，他说我争取来超过你超过100次。那么你接触1年多以来，我想开文先生已经现在有30、40岁差不多了。那么今天有个拉比女士她也来了，她12年以前参与这家公司的组建，几乎是每年每月都是靠着中国，靠着亚洲。那么确实加拿大人的极大的帮助。您再说一个是这个给我最突出的印象， 加拿大人的外语是我接触的欧洲人和北美人中说汉语说的是最好的，比我的英语要好多。还有这个需要意识，就是我们的两位首代都成了加拿大人的媳妇儿。这个应该说，我们现在合作关系非常好，从3腊以后学到了很多东西，我们公司也获得了快速发展。那么，特别是在财富管理方面，我们的资产管理公司去年成立，当年盈利，当年管理资产过千亿，1年半的时间呢，我们现在已经是2.2%，这个在市场上获得了相当大的平台。我们目前为止对这个公司发展充满信心。
Moving to, so first, difference between Canada Pension Plan and CPPIB. That's question number 1. And question number 2, what's your investment policy? What are you looking for here in Asia and in China?
Sure. So CPPIB is set up to manage the assets of the Canada Pension Plan. That is set up, and I'm talking to a room where I think a lot of people are probably more educated on the Canada Pension Plan and CPPIB than I was 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago when I joined, so I'll bear that in mind as I explain this. But CPPIB was set up to solely with the purpose of investing and managing the assets of the Canada Pension Plan that are not immediately needed to pay beneficiaries of the plan. And so we have a very simple investment-only mandate. And so our mandate is very clear that we have to maximize returns on the assets for the pensioners, the contributors and beneficiaries of the plan, and without any risk of loss. And that's essentially, it's a very simple, very clear investment-only mandate. And so it's been built over the last 15 years or so into an organization of about 950 people around the world. We have 3 offices, a head office in Toronto, we have an office in London with about 60 people, we have an office in Hong Kong which was opened about 5.5 years ago where we have about 50 people. As of June, we were about 190 billion Canadian dollars in size, of which about 65% is now invested outside of Canada. And of that, we have somewhere between about 24 and 30 billion invested in Asia. So 24 billion of actual assets invested, about 30 billion of commitments in Asia. And of that that's invested in Asia, it depends on the quarter, but Greater China currently is probably the biggest market for us. We have about $7 billion committed to Greater China, including Hong Kong. And the other 2 important markets for us in terms of assets that are invested or committed so far are Japan and Australia, which are about the same size, $6 or $7 billion in each of those. And frankly, one of the reasons why we have so much in Australia is it's a very simple way of us investing and getting further exposure to China. With some more dependability on long-term regulation on areas where we have very long-term investments, for example, in infrastructure, where infrastructure is being more challenging for us to invest in China. It's easier for us to invest in Australia, but ultimately the economic exposure is to China. So in Asia, we have about 45 people. Our biggest business is investing in real estate in Asia. That was one of the first ones that we started, so we have about 7 billion committed to real estate. In China, that's essentially we have 2 major partners, one with Goodman, where we own warehouses, logistics assets around China. I think we're the 2nd biggest foreign owner of logistics assets in China now, behind GLP. And then secondly, with Capital Land and Capital Malls from Singapore, where we invest in both shopping malls and mixed-use commercial development. For example, the Raffles City project here in Beijing, we own a percentage of that. So that's probably the biggest area of exposure so far. Second would be private equity, where we have 12 partners we invest in, GPs, private equity funds around Asia, of which we have 4 that are dedicated, wholly dedicated to China. And we also have some direct private equity investments as well. We're fortunate one of our direct investments being Alibaba, which is I think one of the most popular stocks at the moment, most topical stocks at the moment, although so we anticipate that IPO sometime in the next couple of years. Although we have a very small stake. We'd love to have more. The other area, we have public market fund investments. So we invest in a number of public market funds, including we also have QFII allocations. So we have $600 million of exposure to the domestic A-share market in China, and of which we've engaged a number of external managers in China to manage that investment. And then we have a number of other programs that are direct private debt investing, direct public market investing, a number of other programs that invest in Asia and in China.
Thank you. I will want to go back to your dependability point in one or two questions, but first I would like to go back to the two of you. You obviously share business, it's joint venture. So question number one for you is, what do you bring to a Chinese partner? Okay? And what are you looking for in a Chinese partner? And same thing for you. What do you bring to a Canadian partner? And what are you looking for in a Canadian partner? So we can start there.
Yeah, I think any joint venture starts with mutual respect and trust. And from mutual respect, the first thing that you need to bring, if you think about respect, is knowledge. And one of the things we bring is a deep knowledge of the insurance industry, and particularly the risk management. And if you think about the financial crisis and some of the things that have happened on the financial crisis, we bring a very long-term view. I think the Canadian financial institutions, as we noted earlier, did quite well in the crisis. So they're well respected across Asia. But bringing that knowledge and expertise is the first thing that we bring with us. And I think that's quite an important element. The other piece of the respect is we run a lot of partnerships in the region. And I think one of the keys is to have sort of clear accountabilities and roles. And we understand that our joint venture partners are operating the business, and we're here to support them and bring that knowledge base. And I think that if you understand those processes, what your accountabilities are, and then setting processes up around that to make sure there's touch points and that you understand the touch points. So being clear on your accountability, being clear on your role, setting up touch points is really, really important. On the trust side, I think it's a little bit different. And Mr. Xie mentioned our former head of Asia being here 100 times. I think it's really important to have face-to-face time. Mm-hmm. And it's really important to work through business issues and see how each of you react to business issues. And I think that there's nothing that can build trust like having that face time. And that's why I try to come here once a month. We've got Mr. Xie to our Hong Kong board. Some of you come to our board meetings, so I'll see him more often. That type of interaction is really critical to making this work. I think the other thing is transparency. I believe strongly in transparency. I think Canadians are known for transparency, so we're pretty upfront in our discussions, and we say, this is where we have an issue, and this is why. And I think that transparency. If you look at what we were looking for from a partner, we want brand recognition. The Sunlight brand isn't known in China, certainly wasn't known before we became part of the Everbright. We're looking for a footprint, a bank insurance footprint, which is very important to us. It's a really important distribution channel, and Everbright has over 700 branches across the country, deep access to 44 million customers. So brand, a customer base, a reputation that's strong for integrity and the way they do business, and somebody that we could trust and interact with were the most important components.
这个非常好的问题。应该说，在过去这个10年的合作中我们在双方合作当中积累了非常丰富的和大量的经验，也的确从双方身上学到了很多东西，双方也都非常受益。那么实际上对中国的保险业来说，起步比较晚。中国人们真正意义上的市场化的保险，应该说也就是15年或者最近10年的事情。那么这个保险的历史是比较短。那中国进入 WTO 那个时候谈判的时候，中国保险的规模是非常小的。 那么中国的保险业之所以能在短短的这10年期间发展出这么大的规模，7万多亿人民币的年保费收益市场，这是跟加拿大一大部分保险像是开路险啊，来中国这个传播这种保险的理念，是密切分不开的。实际上，Sun Life进入中国的历史是非常早的，是在1890年就进入中国的。它那个楼啊，现在还在上海的现在这个浦发银行，民生银行的这个分行里有那个楼，所以建得很早。但中国的保险已经断了，所以最近我们这个合作最突出的，我认为就是什么是保险，保险真正核心的理念是什么，然后在公司治理、产品精算技术、风险管理技术，那么这些方面给中国的保险人啊以极大的启发和启示，给他丰富的经验和教育。那么同时呢，我们的员工和业务伙伴每年呢都到大量的去到这个多伦多，包括波士顿去培训，接受他们这个业务人员的一些业务知识。同时呢，Sun Life他有大量的每年到这里来帮助公司完善风险管理的方面的技术。还有一个值得提的，就刚才我讲的您问的这些意识，实际这方面透露出一些文化信息。双方呢通过北美的市场和中国的这种市场的传统文化，双方的交流，那么互相有很大的启发，都互相深深受益。
Anything you would like on that topic?
On partnership.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what Kevin and Mr. Scher said is absolutely spot on. I think mutual respect and transparency and communication are absolutely the key to all successful partnerships, particularly in China. I think from CPPIB's perspective, partnerships are a philosophy that we have everywhere in the world. We invest the assets in some of, we hope, the best private equity funds, the best public market funds in the world, and we work with some of the best partners in real estate and other asset classes. So we try and identify the smartest people with similar values to us and with local knowledge and networks that can add both to us finding very good investments and also managing those investments for the long term. And there's no way that you can do that on your own. Even though we've developed, say, 950 people today, if you look at, for example, our partner in China in investments in shopping malls, capital malls, we have 5,500 to 6,000 people here in China managing those malls around China. So working with them and their expertise and the local people on the ground in each city is absolutely vital to how we manage those assets in the long term. And what we bring is we bring certainty of assets. We're in a very fortunate position that we have net inflows from Canadian pensions for the next 10 years or so. And beyond that, we have very little drawdowns. So we have very long-term stability of assets. So that's something very comforting to our partners. So we have a very long-term mindset of investing. We can scale up as programs scale up. So we always have capital available if programs are going well to continue to scale the growth of businesses. And we have internally a lot of expertise in different investing classes, which we can share with them. But we're not going to operate a shopping mall, recommend which type of door frames and windows to use on the building. That's not what we do. We're investors, professional investors.
So I'm going to switch gears, and I'm going to say so. I guess you were talking about dependability. So obviously you look at what's the best way to structure transactions, right? You're here on the ground. You actually have a good understanding of the market, but it's not necessarily the case with your board. Your board might be with members that have very good knowledge of the market, but they might be in Toronto with a limited knowledge of So what kind of conversations do you have with your board? How do you transmit the knowledge? How do you convince them that it's good business?
Yeah, I think the one thing I can't help comparing and contrasting, having worked at a US firm for 20 years versus working at a Canadian firm for a year and a half. And I'm not saying this to flatter this room, but because I've said it many times before, but I found that Canadians essentially are a little more open to how things work in the world and a little less dogmatic on, we know exactly how everything should be done, which is a little bit of a New York-centric mindset of, knowing better. So that's my. So it's just culturally, I found that there's a lot more open-mindedness and to how the world operates. Having said that, we have a professional board. They're all professional business people or people from other walks of life, academia and elsewhere, who are none of them are government representatives. They're independent of government, and we report to them on a regular basis on all major transactions and what we're doing around the world. And I think there's a pretty good understanding of the fact that China is the second largest economy in the world, but it's profoundly important to the growth of our assets in the long term. There's a good understanding of the economic situation here, the politics, the context, and the same with the other major markets in Asia. So I found it's a fairly it's a fairly intelligent and informed dialogue that we have with the board. I think we're quite fortunate in that respect.
So the recipe is to have a good board, I guess, that's a good start, right? Anything you would like to add?
I've got a couple of things. One, there is clearly a lot of press about China and Canada. And so one of the things is having a lot of dialogue with the board on what's actually happening, because sometimes what you read in the press and what's sort of going on can have some disconnects. And so making sure that there's a lot of contact, not only with the management team, sort of the regional management team, the people who are here from Canada like myself, but having contact to Mr. Xi and the team here, and finding ways to really make the China experience real. But I agree with Mark that our board is primarily a Canadian board. Many of them have done at least some business in China. And there is a fair amount of sensitivity to the cultural differences. But like everything, you have to get up in front of the newspapers because China's getting more and more press in North America. And sometimes what's said there, sometimes it's a little lost in translation.
So we still have we have a few minutes. So I have one last question. The same question for the three of you. So you're all active in China. So if the Chinese government might undertake in the future, like some market reform, okay, what is the one potential change to the system that would most impact your business?
对这个金融体系来讲，这个市场准入，包括对民营企业放贷，因为11届3中全会以后，11月份正在讨论这个问题，这一定是一个非常大的问题。金融牌照的问题，金融牌照这个准入的问题，这个改革肯定是一个比较重要的一个问题，它会对市场带来非常大的影响。那么最近呢，中央正在开11届3中全会，透露出一些信息，在这方面会改变比较大的问题。这对我们影响是非常大的。
Thank you. So good to say this, I'll maybe take a more general sort of approach. And most of the insurance industry in China is very short-term focused, and the products are short-term focused. I think if there's ways that the government can encourage a broader financial planning, a longer-term outlook, maybe it be tax policy, maybe it be other policies inside from coming from the CERT, but to encourage longer-term life insurance, health insurance, pension products, I think that's going to have a benefit to our business and in turn benefit to the Chinese people. So I think if there's a way to shift that focus of the industry from only short term to short and long term, that would have a big benefit to us. Can I add one other quick thing? I thought about joint venture partnership really quickly. The other thing that makes a successful partnership, though, is success. And there's nothing that kills a partnership like lack of success. So I think finding ways to win and win together is really important.
That's great. That's great. Mark?
I think the most important thing would be the opening up the capital account. And that this is something that there's a lot of reform steps that are building towards that. And if anybody's guessed when that's coming, there's been pretty bold statements made by the senior leadership of China that's what they're aiming towards. So I think freeing up of deposit rates, deposit insurance, more competition in the banking sector, so that there's just more robustness in the financial system that can withstand the opening up of the capital account and the experiments that are likely to take place in the Shanghai Free Trade Zone, potentially other free trade zones in Shanghai, etc. All of that moving towards the opening up of the capital account will have a profound implication because that will result in massive capital flows. And it will result, for example, in the Asia market and very likely be included in the MSCI index over time and other indices, and there'll be a natural inflow of institutional capital from around the world. So that's something that will be a very exciting development in the next few years.
Well, that's basically all the time we have. I just want to thank you very much. It was very insightful, very helpful, and thanks again for being with us today.